Marvel knew exactly what they were doing the moment they revealed that Robert Downey Jr. would return to the MCU, not as Tony Stark, but as Victor Von Doom. They also knew the fandom would explode with questions, and honestly, they leaned straight into it. At the end of that massive presentation at Hall H, Kevin Feige literally looked at the crowd and asked, "Does anyone have any questions?" He knew the answer, because the entire internet had the same question. Why does Dr. Doom look like Tony Stark? And more importantly, are we actually going to see his face? Now, that question has suddenly become the center of a huge mystery surrounding the upcoming Avengers Doomsday, and the answers coming from insiders are completely contradictory. One trusted source says we absolutely will see his face. Another equally trusted source says we won't see it at all. And if that second report is true, Marvel might be setting up one of the boldest storytelling moves in the history of the MCU. But the real reason they might be hiding Doom's face might actually come down to one character whose reaction could completely change the emotional core of the multiverse saga, and that character is Peter Parker. So here's where things get interesting. Over the past couple of weeks, two different industry insiders, both with credible track records, have reported very different things about how Marvel plans to handle Doom's identity in the MCU. The first report comes from insider Charles Murphy, who runs the outlet Murphy's Multiverse. Murphy recently published a detailed editorial explaining what he's heard about Avengers Doomsday, including how Marvel intends to handle the fact that Victor Von Doom apparently looks exactly like Tony Stark. And according to Murphy's sources, the plan is actually pretty fascinating. The audience will see Doom's face, but the characters inside the MCU won't know who he looks like. So in this scenario, Doom removes the mask at some point during the film, revealing the unmistakable face of Tony Stark to the audience watching the movie. But the heroes in the story themselves either don't see it or they don't recognize the significance, which would create a really interesting dynamic because viewers would immediately understand the connection, while the characters in the universe remain completely unaware. But then another voice enters the conversation and it completely flips the idea on its head. According to YouTuber and industry commentator John Campier, the plan is actually the exact opposite. On the John Campier show, Campier claimed that Marvel is not planning to reveal Doom's face at all during Avengers Doomsday. Not to the audience, not to the characters, no one sees it. Instead, the reveal would supposedly be saved entirely for the next film, Avengers Secret Wars. And if that's true, this is an unbelievably bold move, because let's think about this for a second. Marvel is reportedly paying an enormous amount of money to bring Robert Downey Jr. back to the MCU. And the idea that they would spend so much money on arguably the most recognizable face in the franchise and then never show that face during the movie, that would be an absolutely wild creative decision. But strangely enough, there are actually a few production rumors that might actually support that possibility. Let's rewind to when production on Avengers Doomsday first began, specifically when principal photography started. Around that time, several insider rumors suggested that there was some unexpected tension on set, not between actors. That rumor turned out to be false. Instead, the report suggested the issue involved how Robert Downey Jr. was performing the role of Dr. Doom. According to the rumor, during early filming, a stunt performer or stand-in was actually wearing the Doom armor on camera, while Robert Downey Jr. stood off to the side reading his lines, essentially delivering the dialogue offset. Now again, this hasn't been officially confirmed, but the rumor claimed Downey eventually pushed back on that approach. Apparently, he felt the performance needed him physically inside the suit, interacting with the environment and other actors, which allegedly forced the production to reshoot several weeks of footage. Now, whether or not the story is true, it does raise an interesting question, because if Doom's face truly isn't revealed in Doomsday, then technically the character could be played almost entirely in armor, which brings us to another very interesting detail about Robert Downey Jr.'s history in the MCU. One of the lesser known behind the scenes stories from the early MCU is that Robert Downey Jr. absolutely hated wearing the Iron Man suits, and honestly, it's not hard to understand why. Those early suits weren't the sleek, lightweight pieces you see in later films. They were made of fiberglass, heavy, rigid fiberglass armor. Actors who wore them have described the experience as basically being sealed inside a hard shell coffin. The material was stiff, the edges could dig into your body, and if a rough edge pressed into the wrong spot during filming, it could leave serious bruises. That's one of the main reasons Downey pushed for Marvel to transition to motion capture and CGI suits later in the franchise. Instead of wearing the full armor, you could wear mocap gear with tracking markers while the suit was added digitally later. So when you hear that he might now be performing inside Doctor Doom armor for most of the film, it's honestly a bit surprising. But if that earlier rumor about him insisting on wearing the suit is true, then we might actually be getting a full physical Doctor Doom performance, which would be very different from the later Iron Man films. Still, the biggest question remains, why would Marvel go through all of this effort and then possibly hide the face reveal? At this point, one thing seems pretty clear. This is Victor Von Doom, not a Tony Stark variant. Multiple leaks and insider reports have consistently pointed in that direction. So the character is not simply an alternate Tony Stark who became Doctor Doom. Instead, the implication is that Victor Von Doom just happens to look like Tony Stark, and that creates two possible narrative explanations. Either Tony Stark somehow influenced Doom's existence, or Doom deliberately stole Stark's identity in some way. And as more plot leaks surface, the second option appears to be the more likely one. But that still leaves the bigger storytelling question. Why would Marvel delay such an important reveal until Secret Wars? And the answer might actually be hiding in plain sight. Because when you really think about it, there's one character whose reaction to seeing Tony Stark's face would matter more than anyone else's. Obviously, several characters in the MCU would be emotionally impacted by seeing someone who looks like Tony Stark. You have Pepper Potts, Happy Hogan, Morgan Stark. Each one of them would understandably be shaken by that revelation. But there's one character whose reaction would be far more powerful than any of them, Peter Parker. Because in the MCU, Tony Stark wasn't just another Avenger to Peter. He was a mentor, a father figure, the person who believed in him first. That emotional backbone of the relationship has driven some of the most powerful moments in the Spider-Man films. But here's the twist. According to multiple reports, Tom Holland's Spider-Man may not appear in Avengers Doomsday at all. Instead, his next appearance will likely be in the Spider-Man Brand New Day, and that film is expected to bring Peter Parker's timeline up to the events of Secret Wars, which means something very interesting. If Marvel truly waits until Secret Wars to reveal Doom's face, then the moment Peter Parker sees him could become one of the most emotionally devastating scenes in the MCU. Imagine it, Peter has spent years believing Tony Stark died saving the universe, then suddenly the most dangerous villain in existence removes his mask and he looks exactly like Tony Stark. That moment would force Peter into an impossible emotional conflict. Is this truly Tony? Is it someone impersonating him? Could he bring himself to fight someone wearing the face of the man who saved his life? That's the kind of emotional tension that could define an entire movie. And it would explain why Marvel might delay the reveal. Because if that moment is meant to reshape Peter Parker's choices in Secret Wars, then it needs to happen in front of him, not before. Now, if this is the plan, it means Marvel is taking a pretty serious risk, because fans have already spent years speculating about this twist. If Avengers Doomsday ends without addressing why Doctor Doom looks like Tony Stark, a lot of viewers might leave the theater feeling frustrated. They'll ask the same question everyone is asking right now. Why hide the reveal? Why bring back Robert Downey Jr. and never show his face? That kind of decision could absolutely create some short-term disappointment. But Marvel might be betting on something bigger. They might be betting that the payoff in Secret Wars will be worth the wait. Because if that reveal becomes a central emotional turning point for Peter Parker, then suddenly the entire decision makes sense. So when you put all of this together, we're left with two possibilities. Either, number one, Marvel reveals Doom's face during Avengers Doomsday but hides it from the characters. Or number two, Marvel saves the entire reveal for Secret Wars to create a massive emotional moment involving Peter Parker. And honestly, both approaches would be fascinating, but if they really are planning the second option, then Marvel might be setting up one of the most emotionally powerful scenes the MCU has ever done. But now I want to hear from you. Do you think it's crazy that Marvel could pay all that money to bring back Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom and then never show his face in Avengers Doomsday? Or do you think they're saving that moment for something much bigger in Secret Wars? Drop all your theories and reactions in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you get alerts to all my latest videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.